Good evening, everyone. I'm Ted Oberg here at ABC 13, and we are in the midst of what has been going on for what most of us think is a crisis that's lasted far too long. COVID-19 now for months has made hundreds of thousands of our neighbors face challenges they've never dealt with, problems that have never come up, challenges that they've just never faced. But in Houston, what we do is solve problems, and that's what we're aiming to do in this hour. We have a panel of incredible experts who spend their days helping people solve problems, and that's what we're going to do. We've solicited questions for days. You've sent us some very hard ones, and these experts are about to answer them. But before we get started with our panel of experts, I wanted to let you know, get a pen and paper handy. We're going to try and move as fast as we can. We're going to have a lot of information that comes at you about where to contact these people and what to have when you do. All of that information will be posted to my Twitter page, TedABC13. And once this is all concluded, we'll put it up on our website, abc13.com/turn-to-TED. There are the addresses that you can look to later on today. But right now, it's important that you meet our panel of experts. And I want to start with our expert from the United Way. At the United Way, they've been helping connect people with solutions to these problems for months now. Since the COVID crisis started, they've helped more than 95,000 renters, more than 76,000 Houstonians with utility payments, and helped get people connected with nearly 38,000 COVID tests. Our expert from the United Way here tonight is Tan Nguyen. Tan, tell us a little bit about what the United Way has been doing and how you'll be able to help people tonight.
Sure, thank you, Ted. So since the pandemic, obviously a lot of people know the sudden loss of jobs and wages and childcare has created an unprecedented economic crisis, especially for those most vulnerable in our community who were already struggling with the pandemic when the pandemic struck. So United Way of Greater Houston and the Greater Houston Community Foundation have established what is called the Greater Houston COVID-19 Recovery Fund. And to date, nearly 17 million have been contributed to that relief funds from local foundations, corporations, and individuals. And of that, 14.5 million in grants have been deployed to local nonprofits and grassroots charitable organizations who are serving the vulnerable community. So tonight, what I'm hoping to do is really allow you to understand the work of 211 and the work of United Way and connecting you to the resources that we have at 211 and how to navigate the resources.
And she just mentioned it, that's the number to call. Write that down. When you hear Tan talk about a program the United Way offers, the number to call there is 211. If you're online, it's 211texas.org. Christina Cave is joining us from BakerRipley. BakerRipley, we are going to spend an awful lot of time with them. They are administering the programs to help with rental assistance in the city of Houston and in Harris County, but they've done a lot more than that. $9.6 million in utility aid since all of this began, $3.2 million in other relief, and now they're doing the rental program. Chris, tell us a little bit about what BakerRipley is focused on now and how people can get in touch.
Yeah, so thank you, Ted. And as you well said, right now we're going on a great crisis that our neighbors are facing. We are actually getting to meet new neighbors that we haven't met in the past because they've never had the issues or the problems they have right now. So as you mentioned, now we are entrusted by managing the program that the city of Houston and the county has put in place to bring relief in terms of rental assistance for those who live both in the city and the county. So we are working on that. We have a web portal where tenants, and right now the first step is for landlords to enroll to it. But in the same web portal, both for the city or the county, the landlords first, and then next week tenants can start applying.
And there it is right there. For rental specific help, BakerRipleyRentHelp.org. For other issues, BakerRipley.org. Those will be back on the Twitter feed shortly. Up next is Brian Green, the CEO at the Houston Food Bank. We all know the food bank has done tremendous work for years in Houston and stepped up, continuing to deliver nearly twice the amount of help that they have offered in the past, helping more than 2.75 million of our neighbors in need, 147,500 households every week. That is more than double their normal volume. Brian, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We were talking just a minute ago. Your need hasn't decreased at all, has it?
Well, it slowed down a bit, thankfully. I can tell you in the first couple of months, the lines were just absolutely crazy long, and almost every distribution we were running out of food. As we were able to secure more supplies, that helped, but we're still running at about double the normal distribution. We were at well over 1 million pounds a day of distribution for several months in a row. We've been running, last month was like about a little over 900,000 pounds a day. So that still sounds like a lot, but it was frankly a lot easier than where we were. And the community stepped up. So we intend to keep doing this to try and help.
In our cleanup spot tonight, Houston Food Bank, you can reach them if you don't know how to find them, houstonfoodbank.org/COVID-19 for their COVID-related programming. If you're not online, there's that phone number, 832-369-9390. Make sure that your friends who may not be connected to the computer have that if they need it. And now in our cleanup position tonight in this panel of experts, Donna Carney from Lone Star Legal Aid. Donna, thank you so much for joining us. There are your contact numbers. And while people have a chance to write that down, tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing through this COVID crisis.
Sure. Lone Star Legal Aid is a nonprofit law firm, and we're on the front lines providing civil legal services to struggling Texas families throughout this coronavirus pandemic. We're mostly working from home, attorneys and significant support staff, but we do continue to accept cases, both for representation in court and providing legal services and legal advice over the phone in a wide variety of issues. And that includes housing, family safety, public benefits, employment, consumer, and other civil legal needs throughout a 72 county service area in Texas. Lone Star Legal Aid is also working with a coalition of eviction defense legal service providers here in Harris County and City of Houston. We're working on a pilot program that was launched with the help and assistance of our Justice of the Peace, Jeremy Brown, in Precinct 7, Place 1. And this is an eviction right to counsel program that will be offered in a number of jurisdictions. And if you have the information up there, if not, I'm happy to give the phone number and the website for online intake.
If we could, Brandon, we have that phone number and the website, unless it's specific for that program, but the phone number is 713-652-0077 and lonestarlegal.org. If there are more specific ones, feel free to offer those, but those are again going to be posted to the Twitter page here in just a minute for everyone who wants to grab those. Thank you all for being with us. I want to get into the questions as fast as we can because I know viewers are waiting to make sure that their information gets answered. Our first question tonight from Penny Jo in the Highlands, who says she can't go back to work because she is at high risk. She already had COVID once, and now she's worried about paying rent. It is something that so many of our neighbors are facing. Before we get into issues about intricacies of it, if you could, Chris, explain a little bit about how people qualify for this assistance and what they should be doing tonight.
Yes, so the first step is to make sure that your landlord has enrolled to the program, because unless your landlord is enrolled, your property is enrolled, you won't be able to apply. So as you well mentioned, as soon as we are over at 8 p.m. tonight, you have to go to the website BakerRipleyRentHelp.org, and you can check right now already. You input either the complex, the apartment complex where you live, or even your address if you live in a house and you're renting it, and make sure that it's there. If not, reach out to your landlord because they have until Wednesday next week to enroll. Now, for tenants, they will be able to start applying on Monday, the 24th, and they will be able to do that until Sunday, August the 30th. And unlike the first round where it was first come, first serve, now the tenants will have the whole almost 1 week to enroll, and we will be analyzing, and it will be needs-based. So go check with your landlord, first step. And then you right now can start getting ready with having your documents ready. What you will need to have photo ID. So it will be your driver's license. Even if you go to a school, school ID. We just need to make sure that it is you. If you don't have an ID with the address where you're renting, you can offer a utility bill, light, gas, even cell phone. And be ready also to prove your income, because as you get closer to maybe get accepted, we may be asking you that information.
One of the questions that we get is, well, I need help now. Rent is due in 10 days. Is this a program that is going to help pay rent for September or help pay some of the balance that people have accrued throughout this crisis?
And thank you for bringing up that question, because yes, this is a program to help those who haven't been able to pay their rent. This program will help those who have debt or haven't been able to pay from back to April up to August. So we know that there's a lot of tenants out there that maybe they went through a kind of like a payment plan, but they're still recurring debt. And then the other side is that when landlords enroll to our program, they also agree to waive late fees, interest, late payments. So that's also an incentive for our tenants to make sure that the landlords are part of this program.
You told me just before we started that already 2,700 landlords in the city of Houston, Harris County have signed up, which is a fantastic number. It is not, however, the majority of landlords in our area, and we know that. So we got a question from Jay and Katie, who says, I've already talked to my landlord, and they decided not to participate, which has a lot of us residents here possibly looking at having to move out and relocate. The BakerRipley program for the city and the county cannot help residents, right?
In that case, no, the landlord has to be enrolled because they have to agree to the terms. And also then the money that it's awarded goes straight to the landlords. So in this case, they don't qualify for this specific program, but they may qualify for any other type of relief that our colleagues in 211 and United Way may be able to connect them with.
Which brings me to Tom, because what I wanted to talk to you about is there are other avenues for folks if their landlords don't apply. Is that correct? And what is the best advice for people to access rent programs if their landlord doesn't apply to this program, or if they live outside Houston and Harris County?
Absolutely. So BakerRipley is obviously one of the referrals that we would refer individuals to, but when people are calling 211, we gather basic demographic information to determine what resources are available to their community or in their specific zip code. So every call is anonymous. We don't ask for personal identifying information like name and phone number. We simply ask for their zip code if they are a senior or if they're a veteran, because there are unique services also for them. So what happens when someone calls 211 and they indicate that they need help with rent, we look in our database of over 10,000 resources to connect individuals to resources, whether it's a local assistance ministry, some other nonprofits or grassroots charitable organizations. Then we make that referral to the caller. And what happens is we don't just give the name, we don't give just the name of the organization and the phone number. We give them the eligibility requirements, how to contact them, the hours of operation of that program, not the number to the main number, it's to that specific program. And we empower them to call the agencies with all the documentations that are required to get the services that they need, so that when they do make the call, they are ready to be prepared to apply.
And it's crucially important. No one these days has time to waste. So what you're telling us is if you call 211, that information is not shared with the government, not shared with credit bureaus. That is a call between you and the United Way, not a government agency. And 2, you will empower people with all of the information they need to make the second call.
Absolutely. Yeah, and also, Ted, so when someone is calling, obviously when they're calling, they have an immediate need. Talking to a helpline specialist can help address some of the underlying need too. So if someone is needing rent assistance, we know that there are some underlying issues there. Why is it that you need rent this month? Did you lose your job? And the conversation starts to unfold a little bit more, so we can address some of the longer term need.
How quickly someone calls tomorrow 211 or someone calls tonight 211, how quickly can you get people help?
We can connect them immediately. However, if they're calling in the middle of the night and they are homeless or they are being evicted immediately, then obviously, the agencies that we're connecting them to may not be available at that time. So what we would do is look for some alternate solutions, maybe a shelter for in the meantime, but it would be whenever that agency is open, where they can connect to the agency.
Which, Donna, brings me to you as we talk about evictions, because we know these rent relief programs are designed to help people avoid that. But unfortunately, too many of our neighbors are already in that system. And while we've talked about moratoriums, we've talked about stays, it seems that eviction courts are still going. So what is it you can tell our viewers tonight about their rights when they get that paper on their door or under their door or in their mail slot? And what should they be doing as soon as they get it, or maybe even before?
The number one bit of advice that I have for anybody in the legal system, and certainly somebody who's about to lose their home or their housing, is that they reach out and find out if they can hire an attorney. When you make a phone call to Lone Star Legal Aid, if you're eligible for legal services, those legal services are free. And so all it costs you is your time and your effort to pick up the phone. And better yet, I encourage people who have access to the internet to try to fill out our intake application online. Certainly if they're going to try to do that in the middle of the night. I'd like to address the question you've asked others. We do aim to respond to people by the end of the next business day and sooner if possible. We have an intake unit that is a machine. We flag cases where we understand that there's an emergency situation, which may mean a case set for hearing as soon as the very next day. And we're very proud of the fact that our intake staff is highly trained to handle a super high volume of emergency legal situations. That would be my first bit of advice. I want to add to that to say that we have a number of self-help litigation tools. And Ted, I had emailed you a copy of that. We also have those resources available on the Lone Star Legal Aid website. People who feel that they don't qualify or know for a fact that they will not qualify for legal services, have gone through that process, are more than welcome to go to our website and self-educate. I think that part of the challenge is that people are overwhelmed emotionally, and I would encourage people to try to find the hope to do what they can and learn a little bit about the legal system and make an appearance in court. Don't be a statistic that failed to go to court. The last thing I'll say to this that's very important, I could probably talk for the full hour, but I'll just add this one last point. There's a very high default rate in court, and a lot of that I think happens for a number of different reasons. But tenants would be well advised to know that just because you have a notice to vacate or you've been sued in an eviction does not mean you need to leave. Even if there's an eviction judgment entered against you, please contact an attorney. If you are eligible for legal services, and if there's a basis for an appeal, if you have any legal leg to stand on, we urge you to stay in your home, certainly if you are legally entitled to do so.
Can I ask you, and I think this goes for everyone on our panel, but Donna, when is the time to call? Is it when the constables are knocking on your door to move your stuff out? Or is it earlier when the landlord said, hey, in 30 days, this is going to happen? I mean, please tell me, even as people are applying to other programs, if they fear that the outcome may not be good, what's your best advice right now?
My best advice is that if somebody feels like they're facing a legal challenge, they should reach out. At Lone Star Legal Aid, we try to give a very holistic approach to individuals who are facing a crisis, which is to say, if someone calls and they have a dispute with their landlord, and that doesn't necessarily just mean an eviction. There may be a lockout over utilities. There may be another sort of situation. We will look at other issues that may be plaguing that person. There may be unemployment benefits that are not being tapped into where we can assist. There may be other situations that are not fully inspected, and we're happy to assist where we can and provide legal services. So as soon as possible would be my recommendation. If you've missed that deadline, then just as soon thereafter. And we will connect with other community partners if it is not something we can handle for whatever the reason is.
And I wanted to point that out, as I've said to many of you, on our Turn to TED lines, we often hear from people who are up against deadlines, where eviction is about to happen, and they are anxious and nervous, and can you help solve this problem in a couple hours? Unfortunately, I think the more time that any agency has to help solve problems, it's always better. Brian, I wanted to get you in on the conversation. For those of you who are just joining us, we are talking about solving COVID problems that our neighbors are facing. To Brian Green at the food bank, we got a question from someone who said, I'm in need of help for my family real bad. We have no money for food to survive, especially now that unemployment has gone down. I'm curious, Brian, first off, are you hearing a lot of that from folks who come to you, that this crisis has really exacerbated their situation? And secondly, what do people who are facing hunger issues tonight need to do to get in touch with you?
Well, absolutely, we're hearing that far more. It was almost like the dropping of a curtain back in March when we first had the closures and paychecks were cut off, as well as the families having to deal with, well, what if my child was eating the school lunch and breakfast, and that's not happening anymore. It's a common thing. If there is any good news in this, food is actually probably the easiest thing for our community to help with. The reality is, so what we get primarily is surplus from the food industry. And unfortunately, all of this economic disruption has actually caused more surplus. So in addition to all the people who are helping us, we've been able to capitalize on just the unfortunate losses of food going out in the food industry, especially the restaurants, to dramatically increase how much assistance we can do. So not only are we helping more families, but so many of our partners like BakerRipley and Catholic Charities and the Assistance Ministries and Second Mile Mission and so many more, they're actually being more generous because we've got more food to provide per family, as well as the ability to help more than twice as many families each day. So in order to get that assistance, there's two ways. Well, actually three. First, if you remember no other number here, remember 211. United Way Service works really good. We give them all of our information all the time. So they have our information. You can go to our website, houstonfoodbank.org, and you click on the Need Help tab, and you find a pantry. And it's a neat map that you see that will show for every day all the distributions and where they are and what time that they're going on. So you can find the assistance, and it's 7 days a week. You'll find something. The other thing is you can also call us on our hotline, 832-369-9390. And then we have not only people that can channel you to the food assistance program, but we have people to help you get on emergency SNAP. They're trained to also be able to do that work to try and get you more long-term assistance. But I do, in talking about rent, before you get to the problem where you can't afford rent, make sure that you're coming to our partners that are working with us to get the food out, because that saves you money that you can then save for rent. Because it's all tied together. It's all like, if your income has been seriously hampered because your hours have been cut down so dramatically, well, for goodness sakes, let us help you with the food part, because it's going to be so much harder for us to help you with the rent.
And how quickly does it happen? I think there are people who truly get hungry on the day that they are hungry. Is there help available, or is this a qualification and a wait and we'll see and we'll call you?
Again, that's part of the good news in all of this bad news is, yes, it is immediate. You go to the sites, the sites are generally very fast. Oddly enough, COVID has made them faster because with the whole social distancing, we've had to simplify all of our process so that we can do either trunk distributions where you're given the basic information. You don't even need you don't need the ID. You just need to go there. You're declaring your need, saying where you live. They'll drop the food in the trunk, or if you do not have a vehicle, a neighborhood one would hand it out, but doing it in a social distance way. So it's actually a very simplified distribution, so that you should be able to get help immediately.
we've talked about people who don't have transportation. Are there options for them?
Yes, it's more limited. It's not something we actually did before. We never just thought that this was within our capacity to do this, but COVID forced us to do this. We started off working with the local health departments like Harris Health and Houston Health, where they've both been awesome to work with. And knowing that if they identify a family who needs to quarantine or a person who needs to quarantine, and the person says, look, I don't have the resources to do this. Well, the last thing we want them doing is going back out in the community. And so we've given every area health department a phone number and a code to give that person. And then we will arrange to have it food delivered. We'll do it in 7-day increments of everything they need for 7 days. And we've got all these volunteers and organizations like Amazon's doing deliveries, Neuro's doing deliveries. Calvert Toyota and Davis Ford or Chevrolet have donated vehicles. And so we're finding all these ways, and we're doing hundreds of those a day.
That's great.
In addition to that, then we do have the opportunity, but it's limited for someone who needs a food distribution but is not quarantined, but they simply have a transportation option. We should be able to actually help that family as well.
Thank you very much. If you're just joining us, I'm Ted Oberg. Tonight, we're talking on all of ABC 13's online platforms about how to get help for COVID crisis-related problems that you're facing right now. We have an incredible panel of experts. We are putting out our solutions and contact information on our Twitter feed. We're also monitoring our Facebook chat. If you have a question, drop it in there if you haven't had a chance to get it to us online, and we will try and get that answered before the hour is up. One of those questions on the Facebook chat came from Corrine, who said, what about help for retired folks on electric bills? Do you have to be employed or unemployed to get help with utilities? Ton or Christina, do you want to tackle that?
Yes, sure. So thank you for bringing that up. BakerRipley does have utility assistance. And as long as you live in Harris County and you meet if you're retired, you're most likely be eligible. And if you work, you just have to meet the income level. But of course, what we do is we refer anyone to call 211 so they can help you navigate the application. And please reach out to us because as Brian with the Houston Food Bank really well put it, if you are struggling to pay rent, we are sure that you're struggling to pay utilities, you're struggling to put food on the table. So reach out to us. And we do understand that some utility providers have worked some arrangements with the clients, but eventually you're just increasing your debt. So reach out to us and just don't wait while you are getting your energy cut. Even if you're going through that, you can reach out to us. We'll be able to help you as well. So just call 211 and we'll help you out.
And so BakerRipley, for those in Houston and Harris County for help with utility bills. We had a question from Mari in West Houston, and I don't know how far out she is, but similar along those lines about utilities. Ton, you had mentioned that there are several programs available for folks who don't necessarily live in Houston and Harris County. You can connect them with those?
Absolutely. So 211 in the Gulf Coast or 211 Texas United Way helpline in Houston covers 75% of the state of Texas. So during the daytime, we cover the 13 county region, but after hours, we answer for 75% of the state. So we share the same database. So anyone across the state who answers 211 can give the same resource. So we can help anyone locate resources anywhere in the state of Texas.
And I wanted to provide one piece of information that it has days left on a program. If you are facing utility issues, no matter where you live in the state of Texas, the Public Utility Commission, which regulates utilities in our state, has helped nearly 600,000 unemployed people to protect them from losing their power or water during this crisis. As I say, you only have a couple of days left to get into that program to help with some of that monetary relief and stopping utilities from cutting you off. The number, if you want to get in on that program and see if you can still qualify, right there on your screen, also on the Twitter feed, 454-8387, or you can go to that website, texascovid19erp.org. As I say, time is running out on that program, and the aid is likely limited through August. But if you have run up bills that you haven't been able to pay, it is certainly worth a call to them. Donna, I wanted to come back to you and talk a little bit about debt. We got a question from someone talking about student loans, but I think it could also qualify for, we also got questions about car loans as well. In this instance, this person says, I was one credit away from my degree, but I'm still paying rent, I'm still paying bills. What do I do about my student loan, and how can I try and get some relief? As I say, I think that is if we could broaden that out a little bit to talk about sort of personal loans of all kinds.
So, debt, I think, is probably one of the biggest pinching items right now. And student loan debt is something that has been in the media quite a bit. I think it would be important and imperative to really look at the sort of student loan debt that an individual is talking about. There are different sorts of student loan debt, and that's the reason I would feel reluctant to give kind of specific advice in this situation. This is certainly the sort of situation where I would say reach out to a legal service provider, and anybody asking this sort of question is welcome to contact Lone Star Legal Aid for specific advice if they qualify. Generally speaking, regarding debt, and this would go for credit card debt, auto loan debt, we're anticipating, we've heard some of our applicants call in and say that they're worried about eviction, they're moving into their vehicles, they don't want to lose their vehicles to repossession. What do we do? The first bit of advice that I would give is call your lender and keep in mind two really important notes. One, in the state of Texas, you are allowed to record your conversations. That is important because if your lender is willing to work out a different plan with you, I would highly encourage you to get that memorialized, get a recording of it. You could ask your lender to send you a copy of that in writing, but you may never get that in the mail, either because you've just been evicted or you moved or whatnot. If you get a recording of it, you'll have proof that you have that agreement with your lender. If in fact you don't pay and they turn around and try to sue you for some kind of default. So that's very, very important if you want to try to preserve your credit. The other thing I would say is if you are in need, I would encourage people to reach out to some of these community partner organizations. I think sometimes it's a matter of maybe asking for help with utilities so that you can pay your car note or your student loan bill. It may be a little bit of a juggling act, but if there is an ability to pay for some resources or get help with food so that you can pay student loan debt, that, I'm not a financial advisor, but that may be one way to try to meet the need. Generally speaking, consumers need to be wary of the fact that there are not going to be a lot of protections in the way of credit reporting. So if you don't have an agreement with your lender to pause or stall or delay your payment, and sometimes even if you do, it may impact your credit report for many years to come. In other words, it may not be a short-term thing, it may have something with very long-term consequences. If you're going to make an agreement, you may want to ask that your agreement include or involve credit reporting terms as well.
And that is something you should be as specific as possible about when you are having this conversation with someone. Are you going to report me to the credit bureau?
Absolutely. There's no harm in asking. And if somebody tells you on the lender side of the call that they would be willing to give you 2 or 3 months reprieve or forgive a payment or two, you want that recorded. If they can't get it to you in writing in a way that you can trust, then at least get a recording of it over the phone.
We had a question to our Turn to TED line a couple of weeks ago about how often do I need to call? Do I need to call every month? My payment is going to be late. What's your advice there?
I think you're going to need to call as often as you have a need. I think if you're going to be negotiating because you have a need, then you keep at it. Don't wait until you're in default to try to rectify or fix a situation. Be cautious with scams out there that tell you that you will only get a good deal if and when you are in default. There are so many scams out there that will try to help consumers and take a small amount of money to try to help negotiate debt or manage people's debt for some amount of money, but will in fact leave people in a much worse situation than when they ever started. Talk to your lender directly.
Thank you. To all of you who are watching, I promise we have other questions coming up about rental assistance, mortgage assistance, more about debt. I want to push a brief pause because there have been some questions that have alluded to how hard this is to ask for help. And Brian, I wanted to come to you. For people who are first time coming to the Houston Food Bank, how hard is it? And how can you see in their eyes and in their face that this is a very difficult thing for people to ask for?
It's actually a story that we've known for years. Most of the people that we help with all of the hundreds of partner organizations in the community, most of the families we help have a working adult. So you're not alone. I mean, you never thought this would be you. Your income has been cut, maybe completely cut off. That is actually, unfortunately, way more common than you think. So please put that aside. Let us help you before it's too late. Certainly, we don't want you or your children going hungry, and we also don't want you getting evicted. Oddly enough, this is actually maybe a little more comfortable time because we are doing things social distance, and I hate this. And that we're actually interacting less with people, staying in their car, keep your window up, let us just do the distribution. So if anything, it's a little more anonymous. Maybe that would help, but please, the majority, according to the Census Bureau, even before COVID, 2/3 of the food insecure households had an adult who was working. You know, it is no shame. This is just a function of there's just too much low wage employment in the US. Please let us help you.
And Donna, you told me before we began, it was a wonderful thing that you said, don't feel like because you've always been a giver in the past that you can't now be a receiver. And I think that is so important as we get into these questions and we see the individual crisis that so many of our neighbors are facing. Why is that so important?
You know, I mentioned that to you earlier today, maybe on a personal note, because my family, my children and I, were flooded in Hurricane Harvey. And in the sort of work that I do as a consumer rights lawyer and now as the tenant rights advocate, it's in my nature to try to help people. I always have, been told I was either the Robin Hood or the David against Goliath. And it was very, very emotionally challenging to have to ask for help. And, I mentioned this to you over the phone. I feel like I owe a shout out to the Westview Little League team who came out and ripped out the drywall. And I was so grateful. It was very hard to ask for help. And so if there's anybody out there who feels overwhelmed, ashamed, just feels like it's hard for their kids to see them or their elderly parents to see them ask for help, I would implore you to be a role model, ask for help, and remember that when it's your turn to give back to the community.
Yes, because just because we've been knocked down on our knees doesn't mean we aren't going to stand up and then be in a position to return the favor. And I think we've seen that so many times in Houston. It's part of the reason I love this city. I want to get back to some of the specific questions if you're just joining us. So many about this rental program, a couple really quick ones. Chris, someone said, is this program for people who live in city and the county? If you're a renter in a house, do you still apply or do you have to live in an apartment or an apartment complex?
No, you can apply. You don't have to live in an apartment complex, a house. You're good if it's inside the city limits and the county limits. And let's remember that in the city of Houston, there are some parts of Fort Bend and Montgomery County that are part of the city. So if you're not sure about it, just visit the website and input your address and you'll find out.
And again, we talked on that very briefly at the top of our hour here. Applications open for renters in the city of Houston and Harris County on Monday, but you can check right now to see if your landlord has applied and there has to be a match for this program to work. For any of you who know this, what is the status of evictions being paused? We got a question from Bill in Houston who says, why is there no legal stoppage of eviction? Maybe that's for you, Donna, maybe that's for you, Chris. Can one of you clear up Can landlords still evict people now?
I'm happy to address that. Yes, landlords can still evict people now. There were protections in place. There were protections that were put in place both by the Texas Supreme Court, short-lived as they may have been, and expired long ago. There were protections put in by the United States Congress. Those are expiring. Some have expired, the rest are expiring. There's some talk about new protections that may, or continuing protections that may come down through HUD, through Housing and Urban Development. We have yet to read all the details on that. If they will, as promised, come down the pike, they will be very limited in scope. They will cover very few houses, single-family homes, compared to what we've seen up until now. I want to caution people living in Harris County. There were protections put in place by Congress, and yet one of our colleagues in this coalition of eviction defenders through South Texas College of Law and my colleague who ran a very deep dive of research concluded that 24% of evictions filed in Harris County were filed in violation of federal law. And so, yes, evictions are still being filed. We've got a couple of precincts, 2 and maybe 3, where evictions have been filed and the dockets have been gangbusters. We've also had a couple of justices of the peace who really tried to slow down the dockets as much as possible. And even in those courts, we are seeing that the dockets are being picked back up slowly in a very safe manner, I might add. But yes, dockets have continued. People should be aware that the protections are very, very few and far between. Don't rely on any protections to avoid the paper that may be on the door. If it looks like an eviction petition, it probably is.
Ton, one question that came from our Facebook chat from Tabitha. She said, can I apply for rental assistance if I don't have past due rent, but need help for September?
Yes.
Or maybe that's better for Chris. Sorry.
Okay. So the program specific to BakerRipley, I believe that you have to have past due rent. For some of the other programs, you do not have to have past due rent. So organizations are there to help you not to get into that position. So there are definitely programs for not just rent, but mortgage assistance as well.
I want to get to mortgages in just a second. There's a question from Bill in Houston on deck, but for the folks who have rent due in September, that's 10 days from now. Do you believe that there are programs that can help people that quickly if they call 211 tomorrow?
Absolutely. They can
And do you have to, I'm sorry?
Yes.
No, what was?
Yeah, so they can just go ahead, they call 211. We're operational 24 hours. They can call tonight and get that information so they can call them first thing in the morning.
And as you said at the beginning, when you call 211, not only will you get the resource that you should call tomorrow, but 211 operators will also tell you all of the documentation you need to have when you make that call so that you don't have to make a second call. We've all spent way too much time on hold these days, right? So from Bill in Houston, he says, I'm aware of various sources that provide rental assistance. Are there funds available to assist with mortgage payments? And if so, who should I contact and where can those resources be found? So Tom, can you explain what it is that mortgage-wise, what's available?
I don't have the specific agencies in front of me who provide that, but we do have resources in our database that we connect individuals to for mortgage. Again, it's very unique. Everyone's situation is unique. And so it depends on where you live would determine which resources are available. So I encourage you to call 211 at your earliest convenience and just let them know that you need mortgage assistance. And what we simply ask is for your zip code and then connect you to those resources that service your area.
And again, 211 is not going to call my bank?
No, we do not ask for any information from you. We just simply make that connection to from what your need is to that organization that provides that need.
Got it. And Donna, we talked about debt. We talked about loans. Would the same advice apply to the mortgage, to the person facing mortgage late payments or possible mortgage default? What's your advice there? And what are the things to make sure that you're doing and holding on to as you see yourself getting into that crisis?
Absolutely. And so I think that it's imperative in a mortgage situation that the homeowner contact their servicer. Once again, there's a lot of talk about what's going on with the Postal Service. If you feel like you have a good agreement with your lender, I don't know that you want to wait for the mail to bring you a memorialized paper copy of that agreement. You may want to ask if they could send you something by email, if that's not an option, or if there's not a portal where you log in and you can see a document on a portal through the internet, then at a minimum, record the conversation. In Texas, you have the right to do that. You don't need to tell them you're recording the call. You don't need to ask them for permission to record the call, but at least you'll have that information memorialized. If you feel like your servicer, your mortgage bank will not work with you, and you are now falling so far behind into a foreclosure situation, again, my number one bit of advice for you is to contact an attorney. First of all, your property may be subject to federal protections and you may not realize it, whether it's pre-existing federal protections like those under the CARES Act, or maybe new ones that HUD is contemplating at the moment. And if not, again, there may be other options that can save your house from foreclosure. And I would implore that homeowners reach out and get legal advice.
But one of the first things you said was call the servicer. You mean just call the bank and admit, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay you this month? You really just sort of have that honest conversation? They're prepared for that?
I think banks are absolutely prepared for that these days. Yes, I think that banks probably get a flood of those phone calls every day. And I think that the reality is that if you can't pay your mortgage or if you can't pay your note, sticking your head in the sand is not going to help you avoid that situation. And if you can't pay it, you can't pay it. Not having the conversation is not an option in terms of trying to find a reasonable solution. If you don't pay it and they come after you with whatever legal options they have available to them, then you're in a worse situation than if you had tried to negotiate and reach some sort of middle ground. And that would be my first recommendation. Second to that is reach out to an attorney.
Brian, we got a question from our Facebook chat. We touched on this early in the hour, but I want to make sure we touch it again. For people who need food desperately tonight or tomorrow, but have no car, you talked about two things: neighborhood distribution sites and also some of the delivery options. Don't need to go over all that again, but I want to make sure Susan gets an answer. What is it how can they find out where those neighborhood sites are and if they qualify for delivery?
Yeah, it's on our website, houstonfoodbank.org, to look up the sites, and then ideally you find one that is close to you. If you're driving, then you can go distances. It doesn't matter, and it shows them by when they're actually doing the distributions as well as the location. If you cannot leave your home, then do make sure that you call us. We'll try and make arrangements that we can get a delivery done.
Thank you very much. Again, if you are just joining us or stumbling upon our feed tonight, I'm Ted Oberg, and we are talking about connecting you with solutions to COVID crises. One of the things I wanted to touch on before the hour is over is that there are a lot of people who are still in an okay position, who are watching their neighbors and concerned about how they are doing and how our city is doing. Volunteer Houston is a dynamite organization that can help connect people who are doing okay to neighbors who aren't. And I want to make sure you have that number. If you are still in a position to be a giver instead of a receiver, please apply now. VolunteerHOU.org. They have virtual volunteering opportunities as well as in-person opportunities. And I don't want to move off this section of our conversation without asking all four of you if there are people who are in a position to help, whether it is with money or time. Please tell us what you need most right now.
So if I can start with BakerRipley, we welcome anyone that would like to help us volunteer at any of our food distributions. Before COVID, we would host one each month at each of our 6 community centers. Now we are hosting one each week. So the need is overwhelming. We have all the health protections in place, masks, social distancing, and because of that, we need more help. So just go over our website, BakerRipley.org. You will find all the volunteer opportunities we have there. And please just, if you're able and you feel comfortable, believe me, you will have a great time connecting also with our amazing volunteers that have been lifelong volunteers, but there's a big need there.
Got it. Brian?
Yeah, so I would say the same thing as Christina. That absolutely. Now we're running 3 warehouses now. You know, we added 2. We've got dramatically reduced the how many people volunteer in one place in a shift. And if you go to our website on the volunteer section, it shows all the shifts, all the locations you can go. It absolutely is our biggest need right now. There's so much more work to do, and frankly, it's a lot harder to do. I would also encourage you. We have so many great partners that are making this possible. You know, when you say you get food assistance, you're going to a place like Catholic Charities or Second Mile Mission or Covenant with Christ. You can actually identify them and who in your neighborhood you might want to volunteer. Just the same place if you were going for food assistance. You know, click on the need help and see the pantries and say, oh, there's an order. I didn't know they were doing this, and you can volunteer to help them. Anything that you help in all of this effort would be tremendously appreciated.
Is 211 set up to do that? I don't want to get off this conversation without at least offering that opportunity.
Yes, if you can call 211 to connect individuals to volunteer opportunities, and we have those volunteer opportunities where we can connect individuals to. But for United Way of Greater Houston, I would say, well, with 211, last year we made 1.3 million connections to the community, and we are about 40% up in our connections this year. So that demonstrates the need in our community. So I would ask that if you can and are able to consider giving to the United Way so that we can invest in the programs that we're talking about today.
And Donna?
So I'm going to make a unique request. I don't think we have been asked this recently. I've actually messaged my office to see if there's anything else besides what I'm aware of. You know, we have a graduating class of lawyers who are going to have a hard time sitting for the bar exam. We've got a lot of lawyers who are out of work, and we have a pro bono unit. So if there are volunteer lawyers who would like to come help us, we're always looking for volunteer lawyers who would like to come and join our ranks and handle a case or two. I don't have the exact extension at the moment, but you're welcome to give them my email address offline, and they can call our intake number and just let them know that they heard about the volunteer opportunity. We will certainly get lawyers in touch with our pro bono efforts.
Thank you very much. And there's the number to call if you are a lawyer out of work or not, who is willing to help or legal. Please take a look at those numbers. Again, want to point out all of the numbers that we have given are on our Twitter feed, TEDABC13. They'll also be on our website once we're all done and have a chance to break it all down. Let's go into a lightning round. We have 7 minutes left, if I could. One on rent. This is from Cynthia, who says, I'm a landlord. My tenants didn't pay their rent for April, May, June, and July, and they moved out last month without paying any rent. Is there any assistance for them now that they have 4 months without rent for that landlord? Do any of these programs apply to them? Chris or Tom?
Well, in that case, he can enroll, but the thing is the tenants will have to apply for it. So if he has a way to connect with them, because they still have that debt hanging, right? Even though they left the property. Mm-hmm. So if he can enroll and connect with them for them to apply, that would be one route. And maybe on with United Way has another option.
We don't currently have any programs that I'm aware of that actually help with landlords, but we do try to encourage them to apply for like the business loans and things like that to offset that. But currently right now, we don't have programs.
From Ian, who says it sounds like his landlord may be trying to steer him away from this rental assistance program. He said they're going to ask you really hard questions, and that in order to qualify, you have to be on SNAP or some government aid. Chris, is that true?
Not true, not at all. You can, push them to enroll. And I can tell you that the process is very simple. You'll be able to do everything online. And by Monday, we will have access also for you. If you don't have internet access or it's kind of like difficult, you will be able to call a phone number where you'll be guided. And that number will be public early next week. So don't worry, don't steer away from it.
Leslie, under the wire from the Facebook chat, is there any assistance for medical prescriptions?
Yes, there is. There is assistance for that, where they can also help pay for the prescription and co-pays, but also some other options like applying for some prescription discount programs. And I'm going to lift up a little bit of the question you asked, Brian, about transportation access. We have a unique transportation program in partnership with DoorDash and Lyft to be able to provide transportation for individuals who may need to pick up their prescriptions, for instance, or if it's related to medical appointments, to and from medical appointments, to get to and from work, to access food, to get to those food pantries if they can. And then we're partnering with DoorDash also with some of the partner agencies to provide or connect their clients to food access. Even if people are needing transportation for educational, and I say that because school is starting, individuals who may need to get to the school to pick up their laptops or pick up backpacks, things like that, we can provide transportation through our Lyft program. So you can simply call 211, talk to our helpline specialists, and it's just as simple as scheduling a ride as you would be able to on your app.
Donna from Kiwana, who says, I've been out of work since March, filed for unemployment. I was denied. I had filed an appeal. I've called the number over 100 times. No one ever answers. What's the best advice for someone who's fighting benefit qualification issues?
Yeah, so I think that every individual's application for unemployment is going to be very unique. So it's difficult for me to respond to that individually, but we do have a public benefits unit, and I would encourage anybody dealing with public benefits, unemployment issues to give us a call and find out. Certainly if they're unemployed, there's a very decent chance that they would qualify for our services. Give us a call so that we can determine eligibility and then try to help them through that process.
I think let's stay with you for just a second. My homeowners association has gone to court to purchase my home. I'm devastated this happened, especially in the middle of all of this. And my husband is disabled. They're retired. Is that something you can fight?
Again, I think it's very specific to the facts of the case, but yeah. I can tell you that we have some very talented attorneys who do handle homeowners association cases. Once again, all it takes is a phone call to Lone Star Legal Aid to determine eligibility and resources. If it's something that we can do, it is certainly the sort of case that we've handled in the past.
Due to our last question for tonight, due to all of this with online learning and kids and unemployment and everything, what about parents who have to work and have small kids and need assistance? Where is their childcare assistance, if at all, in the midst of this? Ton, Chris?
There are still childcare available. You can call 211. We have a database with all the childcare facilities, and we can connect them to those resources. It is limited because of the capacity, but we do have also financial assistance for childcare as well.
Thank you. I wanted to close tonight by asking each of you, calling a bit of an audible. I didn't tell you I was going to do this before, but what is your one piece of advice, no matter what crisis people find themselves in tonight? What is the one piece of advice you can offer our neighbors about seeing the big picture, about making sure that they are seeing the next step they need to take?
I would say ask for help. Just like we mentioned earlier, it's just asking for help. We have had many people who have called for the first time, not knowing how to navigate the social service landscape, but just ask.
Go ahead. Anyone? Brian, you got one piece of advice?
Yeah, we will get through this. Please hang in there. Keep trying. Keep plugging away. Eventually, this will be over.
Donna?
You know, I think that every time there's a disaster, there are some scam artists who come out of the woodworks. Please do not think that the scam artist offering you some legal solution, be it $100 for an eviction defense or something similar like that, is going to be the cure-all to your legal problem. Please contact an attorney. Please contact Lone Star Legal Aid if you're struggling financially to see if you qualify for free legal help.
Thank you. Chris?
I agree with everything that all my colleagues have said, and we have a great tool. People are watching us through Facebook. Social media gives us a window to know what is going on out there. So on behalf of BakerRipley, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and that way you will learn about our food distributions, utility assistance, any resources that we have. Please reach out, don't wait.
Tom, Brian, Donna, Chris, thank you so much for spending an hour with us. But more importantly, thanks for what you've done for the last 6 months and what you'll continue to do to help our city. And to all of you who watched and joined us, I hope we were able to give some sense of what a next step is, some next step for all of us in this midst of this crisis. These are not easy days. All of our panelists would agree, none of this is easy. It is unprecedented. And for so many of us, it's the first time we've ever had to face so many of these issues. Please know you're not alone. We continue to get your calls. We will continue to try and answer them. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for keeping your chin up. And as Brian said, this will end. We will get through this. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great hour. From what you would do to end your evening. And thank you so much. I hope we were able to help some people tonight. So thank you. Thank you.
I'm really honored that you asked us to be on this. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
I can't remember, I think it was Dana,